On the morning of August 8th, 1941, at precisely 5:47, a 24-year-old woman named Lyudmila Pavlichenko was crouched low behind a pile of debris in Belalayka, Ukraine. She watched a German sniper preparing to take the life of a Soviet soldier who was concealed roughly 40 meters to her left. She was a history student. She'd been with the Red Army for only 4 months. Her confirmed kills stood at 0. She had 309 more to go. The Wehrmacht had deployed 3 complete divisions with the goal of capturing Odessa. 150,000 German troops were pushing forward. The Soviet forces found themselves outnumbered at a ratio of 3-1, and Lyudmila Pavlichenko had just volunteered to join a sniper unit that was losing its members faster than replacements could be trained. She'd been positioned on the front lines for 6 hours straight. No rest, no nourishment, just her Mosin Nagant rifle, 40 rounds of ammunition, and what could only be described as a death wish fueled by patriotic rage. 11 days prior, her university in Kyiv had been destroyed by bombs. 73 students had been killed. Her professor, Dr. Anatoly Vulov, had been trapped beneath the debris for 2 hours before they recovered his body. Her closest friend, Natasha, had perished in the library. The fire had engulfed the entire building. Natasha hadn't been able to escape. The morning after that tragedy, Lyudmila had enlisted. The recruiting officer had suggested she become a nurse. Women, he'd said, were meant for medical units, not for infantry combat. Lyudmila had informed him that she'd been handling firearms since the age of 14. She'd earned marksman scores in her youth shooting club. She'd placed in the top tier at regional competitions. The officer had laughed at her. He'd told her that shooting stationary targets was nothing like actual combat. Combat, he'd explained, involved blood, screaming, and death. Women simply couldn't handle such things. Lyudmila had told him to test her abilities. The officer had handed her a rifle and pointed toward a fence post 100 meters distant. She'd placed 5 rounds straight through the center of it. The officer had stopped laughing after that. She'd been assigned to the 25th Rifle Division in the role of sniper. That assignment had been 4 months ago. Now, here she was in Ukraine, watching Germans kill her fellow soldiers, and she still hadn't taken her first shot. The German sniper was positioned 280 meters away, concealed behind the wall of a destroyed farmhouse. Through a crack in the masonry, Lyudmila could make out his helmet. He was tracking the Soviet soldier, waiting patiently for movement. The Soviet soldier was Sergeant Dmitry Kravchenko. He was 32 years old, married, father of 2 children. Lyudmila had met him the previous day. When she hadn't eaten for 18 hours, he'd shared his bread with her. Now he was moments away from death because he had no idea a German rifle was aimed in his direction. Lyudmila raised her weapon. Her hands remained steady. Her breathing stayed controlled. The voice of her instructor echoed through her mind. "Don't think of it as killing," he'd said. "Think of it as solving a problem. Distance, wind, target movement. It's mathematics, not murder." 280 meters. A light crosswind coming from the west. The target was stationary. She made her adjustment for windage. She settled the crosshairs on the crack where the German's helmet was visible. Her finger made contact with the trigger. This moment would define everything that followed. Either she possessed the ability to kill, or she didn't. Either she was truly a soldier, or she was merely a student, playing at war. She squeezed. The Mosin Nagant recoiled against her shoulder. The sound cracked across the battlefield. Through her scope, she observed the German's helmet jerk backward sharply, then vanish from view. Kravchenko looked around, clearly confused. He didn't understand what had just occurred. Lyudmila chambered another round and scanned for additional threats. Nothing was moving. She'd just killed her first German soldier. She felt nothing, no sense of guilt, no feeling of satisfaction. Just the immediate question forming in her mind, where's the next one? That moment occurred on August 8th, 1941. By the time May of 1942 arrived, Lyudmila Pavlichenko would have 309 confirmed kills to her name. This would include 36 enemy snipers. She would become the deadliest female sniper that history has ever recorded. And the unconventional trick that made all of this possible was something Soviet doctrine explicitly prohibited. She used her own body as bait. If this story is drawing you in right now, hit that like button immediately. It signals to YouTube that this content should be shared with more people who care about these forgotten heroes. And subscribe so you won't miss what happens next in this account. These stories hold significance. The people who lived through them deserve to be remembered. You're playing a part in making that remembrance happen. The first sniper Lyudmila lost was Lieutenant Anna Morozova. This happened on August 19, 1941. Morozova had served as a sniper for 8 months. She had 47 confirmed kills. She was experienced, intelligent, and she followed the book precisely. Soviet sniper doctrine was crystal clear. Never expose your position. Find proper concealment. Take your shot. Move immediately to a secondary position. Never remain in one location for more than 30 minutes. Never fire more than 3 shots from the same spot. Never engage unless you've got a clean exit route planned. Morozova had followed every single rule. She'd positioned herself in a bombed-out apartment building on the 3rd floor. She had excellent sightlines. She'd planned 2 exit routes. She'd engaged a German machine gun crew at 320 meters, 1 shot resulting in 1 kill. Then she'd moved to her secondary position on the 2nd floor. She'd waited 20 minutes. She'd engaged a German officer at 280 meters. Clean kill. She'd started moving toward her tertiary position on the ground floor. A German sniper had shot her through the stairwell window. A single shot to her chest. She died before the medics could reach her. The German sniper had been tracking her movements. He'd watched her first shot, predicted her movement pattern, and positioned himself to intercept her. Morozova had never seen him. She'd followed doctrine to perfection and died anyway. Lyudmila had been in that same building, 1 floor below. She'd heard the shot. She'd heard Morozova fall. She'd heard the Germans laughing. They knew they'd eliminated a Soviet sniper. The German who'd killed Morozova was Hans Becker, a Wehrmacht sniper, 89 confirmed kills. He specialized in counter-sniper operations. He hunted Soviet snipers the same way Lyudmila hunted German soldiers. Becker's pattern was consistent. He'd wait for Soviet snipers to engage their targets. He'd track their positions. He'd anticipate their movements. He'd kill them when they relocated. Soviet doctrine made his work easier. If you followed the rules, you became predictable. If you became predictable, you ended up dead. The second sniper Lyudmila lost was Corporal Viktor Stepanov. This occurred on August 27th. Stepanov was 19 years old. He'd been a sniper for 6 weeks. He had 11 confirmed kills. He was a good kid, eager to prove his worth. He'd set himself up in a drainage ditch 400 meters from the German lines. Perfect concealment, good sightlines, textbook positioning. He'd engaged a German patrol at dawn. 2 shots, resulting in 2 kills. The Germans had scattered and taken cover. Stepanov had followed doctrine. He'd stayed low. He'd waited 15 minutes. He'd prepared to move to his secondary position. A German artillery shell had landed directly in his ditch. Obliteration kill. Nothing remained to bury. The Germans had called in artillery based on where they calculated the sniper was hiding. This was a standard counter-sniper tactic. Observe the shot, estimate the position, saturate that area with explosives. Stepanov's concealment had been perfect. His shot placement had been excellent. His adherence to doctrine had been flawless. He died anyway because the Germans knew exactly how Soviet snipers operated. By September, Lyudmila had witnessed 7 snipers die. Every single one had followed doctrine. Every single one had died because they were predictable. German counter-sniper units were too skilled. They knew Soviet tactics inside and out. They knew Soviet positioning. They knew Soviet movement patterns. Fighting by the book meant dying by the book. Lyudmila studied how each engagement developed. The same pattern repeated itself. A Soviet sniper would take position. They'd engage a target. The Germans would triangulate the shot. Counter-sniper fire or artillery would respond. The Soviet sniper would die or be forced to retreat. The problem wasn't marksmanship ability. Soviet snipers could shoot accurately. The problem was that they fought defensively. They waited for targets to appear. They took shots when opportunities presented themselves. They followed doctrine. They never initiated action. They never controlled the engagement. They never made the Germans react to them. German snipers, especially the experienced ones like Becker, hunted actively. They didn't wait for targets to appear. They created them. They forced Soviet snipers to expose themselves, then eliminated them. Lyudmila needed to reverse that dynamic. Stop being the prey, become the predator. But Soviet doctrine was explicit. Concealment equals survival. Exposure equals death. Never compromise your position. Never give the enemy a target. The doctrine made sense in theory. In practice, it functioned as a death sentence. German counter-snipers were too skilled. They could locate you even when your concealment was perfect. Lyudmila decided to do something completely illegal. She would expose herself deliberately, make herself visible, draw their fire, then kill whoever shot at her. It was insane. It violated every principle of sniper warfare. It would probably get her killed. But 7 snipers were already dead. and Lyudmila refused to become the eighth. The trick required precision timing, perfect positioning, and absolute nerve. Lyudmila would establish two nests, not just one, a primary and a secondary position, but they'd only be 4 to 6 meters apart, close enough that she could move between them in under 3 seconds. She'd place a decoy in the primary nest, a helmet mounted on a stick, a spare sleeve stuffed with straw, anything that resembled a person from 300 meters away. She'd hide in the secondary nest, watching. When a German sniper shot at the decoy, the muzzle flash would give away their position. Lyudmila would have 2 to 4 seconds before they realized the decoy was fake. In those seconds, she'd acquire the target, aim, and fire, one shot. If she missed, the German would know her real position. She'd be dead. If she hit, she'd move immediately, reset the trap, and do it again. The plan was suicidal. Soviet command would court-martial her if they discovered it. Exposing a position deliberately, even a fake one, was tactical insanity. But Lyudmila had watched too many friends defollowing doctrine. She tested the technique on September 3rd, 1941, early morning. The German lines were 340 meters away. She set up in a ruined cellar near the front line, 2 shooting positions. One with a helmet propped on debris, positioned to resemble a sniper, observing German positions. She waited in the secondary position, 5 meters to the right, completely concealed. Her rifle was aimed at the area where a German counter-sniper would most likely position himself. 45 minutes passed. Nothing moved. Lyudmila's muscles ached from staying motionless. Her eyes watered from staring through the scope. Insects crawled across her hands. She didn't move. At 6:17 inches the morning, a shot cracked across no man's land. The helmet in her primary nest jerked backward. Someone had taken the bait. Lyudmila scanned the German lines. There, 320 meters away, a muzzle flash, a figure shifting position behind a brick wall. She had 3 seconds. Her crosshairs settled on the figure. She couldn't see details, just a shape. She fired. The figure dropped. She didn't wait to confirm. She abandoned both positions. She moved 40 meters west. She set up in a different building. Through her scope, she watched the brick wall where the German had been. 2 German soldiers appeared, dragging a body. Confirmed kill. The technique worked. Over the next 6 weeks, Lyudmila refined the method. She learned exactly how long to wait, how to position decoys, how to predict where German snipers would set up. She studied their patterns obsessively. German snipers preferred elevated positions. They liked to shoot from buildings, 2nd or 3rd floor. They avoided ground-level hides because Soviet artillery targeted those first. They positioned themselves with the sun at their backs when possible. They rarely changed positions during daylight. Lyudmila used all of this information. She set her decoys to be visible from elevated German positions. She timed her operations for when the sun would be in German snipers' eyes, not hers. She built her secondary nests at ground level, where Germans wouldn't expect her. She treated every engagement like a chess match. The decoy was her opening move. The German's shot was their response. Her kill shot was checkmate. By October, Lyudmila had 78 confirmed kills. 22 of them were German snipers. Word spread through Soviet units, the woman sniper who hunted the hunters. Soldiers started requesting her for counter-sniper operations. Officers who'd lost men to German snipers came to her personally. They begged her to help. Some brought bottles of vodka, some brought extra rations, some just brought their grief. A lieutenant named Volkov came to her on October 12th. His platoon had lost 9 men to a German sniper in 4 days. The sniper operated near a railway junction. He shot from different positions. He killed officers, radio operators, machine gunners, anyone important. Volkov's men were terrified. They refused to move during daylight. The entire platoon was paralyzed. Volkov asked Lyudmila to kill the German. She said yes, not because of the vodka Volkov offered, because she remembered Morozova, because she remembered Stepanov, because German snipers had killed 7 of her friends, and she wanted revenge for every single one. She studied the railway junction for 2 days. She watched through binoculars from 800 meters away. She mapped every position with sightlines. She counted buildings. She measured distances. She noted wind patterns. The German was smart. He never shot from the same place twice. He never established a pattern. But he had to shoot. And when he shot, he had to be somewhere. Lyudmila identified 11 possible positions. Too many to watch simultaneously. She needed to force the German to reveal himself. She set up 5 meters from where Volkov's men congregated. She made a decoy that looked like a Soviet officer. She put it in a position where it would be visible from 8 of the 11 possible German positions. Then she hid 12 meters away. Her rifle was aimed at the most likely German location. 6:30 inches the morning. The decoy stood in the open for 40 minutes. Nothing happened. Lyudmila stayed motionless. Her legs cramped. Her back ached. She didn't move. At 7:11 inches the morning, the shot came. The decoy's helmet spun away. Lyudmila saw the muzzle flash. 420 meters. Inside a train car. The German had positioned himself inside a destroyed boxcar. Brilliant hiding spot. Lyudmila had considered it unlikely because the boxcar was exposed to Soviet artillery, but the German had calculated that Soviet forces wouldn't waste shells on a single boxcar. He'd been right, until now. Lyudmila adjusted for distance and wind. The German was moving inside the boxcar. She could see his shape through the open door. She had maybe 5 seconds before he realized the decoy was fake. She fired. Through her scope, she saw the German jerk backward. He didn't fall, he stumbled. She'd hit him, but not fatally. He was wounded, trying to escape. She chambered another round. She fired again. The German dropped. Volkov's men moved in afterward. They found the German dead inside the boxcar. 2 shots, one through the shoulder, one through the head. His logbook listed 67 confirmed kills. Volkov asked Lyudmila how she'd known where he was. She said she didn't. She just made him shoot first, then she killed him. Simple mathematics. Volkov said it wasn't mathematics, it was courage, or insanity, probably both. German units put a bounty on her, by 100 Reichsmarks for whoever killed the Russian girl, then 500 Reichsmarks, then 1,000. The price kept rising as her kill count climbed. German propaganda broadcasts mentioned her by name. They called her the Devil Woman. They said she was a myth. They said no woman could kill that many Germans. They said she was Soviet propaganda. They said if she was real, she was probably a man disguised as a woman. Lyudmila heard the broadcasts. Other soldiers told her what the Germans were saying. She found it funny. The Germans were so terrified of her, they couldn't believe she existed. Their denial was proof of her effectiveness. Lyudmila didn't care what they said. She cared that they were scared. Scared enemies make mistakes, and Lyudmila was there to punish every mistake. She started leaving signatures, small things, a piece of ribbon tied near her shooting position after she'd left, a playing card placed on a dead German sniper's chest, the Red Queen of Death. Soviet propaganda loved it. Newspapers published stories about Lady Death, who taunted German snipers before killing them. Lyudmila never confirmed or denied the stories, let them believe what they wanted. Belief created fear, fear created mistakes, mistakes created opportunities, and opportunities created confirmed kills. The engagement that made her legendary happened on November 7th, 1941. German forces were pushing hard on Sevastopol. Soviet defenders were holding on by their fingernails. The siege was brutal, food was running out, ammunition was rationed, medical supplies were nearly gone, and a German sniper had killed 11 Soviet soldiers in 3 days. Officers, sergeants, anyone who gave orders. The sniper was systematically decapitating the Soviet command structure. Nobody could locate him, nobody could counter him. He took 1 shot, then vanished, disappeared like a ghost. Soviet command was desperate. Major Chernov called Lyudmila to headquarters. He showed her photographs of the dead. Entry wounds, perfect placement, every shot was fatal, no wounded, just dead. The German was exceptionally skilled. Chernov said the entire command structure was paralyzed. Officers were afraid to show themselves. Sergeants were refusing to give orders in the open. The sniper was winning through terror. He wasn't just killing people. He was destroying morale. Soviet command asked Lyudmila to find him. They gave her 48 hours. If she couldn't kill him, the entire sector might collapse. Commanders would refuse to lead. Units would fragment. The German offensive would break through. 48 hours. 1 sniper against another. Winner takes the sector, loser dies. Lyudmila accepted. She had no choice. This was what she'd trained for. This was why she existed on this battlefield, to kill German snipers, to be better than them, to prove that courage and innovation could defeat experience and skill. She studied the kill locations, all within a 400-meter radius, all during early morning between 5:45 and 7:30, all single shots to the head or chest. Precision work? The German was good, very good. She plotted the angles on a map. Every kill came from a slightly different direction. Northeast one day, southwest the next, northwest after that. The German was mobile. He changed positions constantly, never shot from the same place twice. never established a pattern. He was following doctrine perfectly. He was everything Morozova had been, everything Soviet doctrine taught, and Morozova was dead. Lyudmila needed to think differently. She studied the terrain with Lieutenant Boris, a reconnaissance officer who'd survived the siege of Odessa. Boris knew Sevastopol better than anyone. Every street, every ruin, every crater. They walked the perimeter at night. Dangerous work. German patrols were active. But Lyudmila needed to see the battlefield from ground level, needed to understand sightlines, needed to think like the German. The area was urban ruins, collapsed buildings, rubble-filled streets, shell craters everywhere, 1,000 hiding places. The German could be anywhere. But he had to see his targets, which meant he needed sightlines, clear views, unobstructed angles. Lyudmila mapped every position, with clear views of where Soviet officers congregated. The command post, supply depot, communication center, observation posts. She identified 14 potential sniper positions, buildings with intact upper floors, ruins with good concealment, positions that offered multiple escape routes, too many to watch simultaneously. She needed to narrow it down. The German shot in early morning. Why? Lighting, routine, wind conditions. Lyudmila thought about it for hours, lay in her bunk staring at the ceiling, running scenarios. Early morning meant Soviet officers were visible, moving between positions, checking defenses, giving orders. First light meant soldiers were tired, less alert. Guards were changing shifts. Attention was divided. The German was hunting during shift change. That meant he was watching specific locations at specific times. He knew Soviet routines. He'd studied them. He was patient. He was smart. He was everything Lyudmila had to beat. Lyudmila picked the 3 most likely positions based on sightlines and escape routes. North tower of a destroyed church, 3rd floor of a collapsed apartment building, rooftop of a former school. All had perfect views of Soviet command areas. All offered multiple exit routes. All were elevated enough to provide advantage. Then she did something even more insane than her normal tactics. She decided to become the bait herself, not a decoy, not a helmet on a stick, herself, standing in the open, making herself the most valuable target on the battlefield. If the German took the shot, she'd have maybe 1.5 seconds to react. If she was wrong about his position, she'd be dead before she hit the ground. If she was right, she'd have one chance to dive, acquire the target, and fire before he repositioned. One chance, one moment, everything on the line. November 8th. 5:42 inches the morning. Lyudmila wore an officer's coat she'd borrowed from a dead lieutenant. Too big for her, but recognizable from a distance. She stood in the open near the command post, right where officers usually gathered for morning briefing. She made herself a target, exposed, vulnerable, alone. Her rifle was 4 meters away, propped behind rubble, aimed at the most likely German position, the destroyed church tower. If she was wrong about the location, she'd be dead before she could react. If she was right, she'd have maybe 2 seconds to dive, grab the rifle, acquire the target, and fire. 2 seconds between life and death. 2 seconds to prove she was better than him. She stood there for 17 minutes. Each minute felt like an hour, exposed. Every nerve screaming at her to take cover, every instinct telling her this was suicide. Her hands stayed at her sides, relaxed, had to look natural, had to look like a real officer, not bait. Wind blew cold across the ruins. She could hear distant artillery, machine gun fire to the east, normal battlefield sounds. Nothing moved in the German positions. Maybe the German wasn't there. Maybe he'd repositioned during the night. Maybe he'd been killed by artillery. Maybe this entire plan was based on faulty intelligence, and she was standing in the open for nothing. Or maybe he was watching her right now, crosshairs centered on her chest, finger on the trigger, waiting for the perfect moment. Her heart pounded. Sweat ran down her back despite the cold. She counted seconds. 120 seconds standing in the open. 120 seconds of being a target. Nothing happened. Maybe the German wasn't interested. Maybe he'd seen through the trap. Maybe. The shot came at 5:59 inches the morning. Lyudmila heard it before she felt it. The crack of a rifle. Distinct sound. Mauser Karabiner 98. The snap of a bullet passing centimeters from her head. So close she felt the air displacement. So close it parted her hair. She dove left, not back, left toward her rifle. She hit the ground hard. She ignored the pain. She grabbed her rifle. Her hands found it instantly. Muscle memory. She'd positioned it perfectly. She swung the barrel toward the church tower. She scanned through the scope. There, 300 meters. 3rd floor of the destroyed bell tower. A figure moving back from an opening. He'd taken the shot. He was repositioning, moving back into shadow. She had maybe 3 seconds before he was concealed completely. Lyudmila didn't take time to aim perfectly, didn't calculate wind, didn't adjust for exact distance. She just pointed and fired. Instinct shot. The kind of shot instructors say never to take. The kind of shot that gets you killed in combat. Her rifle kicked against her shoulder. Through the scope, she saw the figure jerk, saw him stagger, saw him fall backward into darkness. She didn't know if she'd hit him or if he'd taken cover. She stayed down. She watched. She waited. She chambered another round. She kept her scope on the tower opening. If he appeared again, she'd fire again. And again. Until one of them was dead. 3 minutes passed. Nothing moved in the tower. No return fire. No movement. Either he was dead, or he was playing the same game, waiting for her to expose herself again. Lyudmila didn't move. She'd learned patience. Learned that the sniper who moved first usually died first. 10 minutes passed. The sun was rising. More light meant more visibility, more risk. Soviet soldiers were starting their morning routines. Officers were emerging from bunkers. If the German was still alive, he had more targets now. But he didn't shoot. 15 minutes after her shot, Lyudmila saw Soviet infantry moving toward the church. Boris had organized a clearing team. They'd been waiting for her signal. She'd signaled by shooting. The soldiers entered the church cautiously, rifles ready, expecting ambush, expecting the German to be alive and waiting. Lyudmila watched through her scope. She followed their movement through the ruins. They reached the 3rd floor. They entered the bell tower. 2 minutes later, Boris appeared at the tower opening. He waved. All clear. Target down. Confirmed kill. Lyudmila lowered her rifle. Her hands were shaking. Not from fear, from adrenaline crash. She'd just survived a duel with a German sniper. She'd made herself bait. She'd taken an impossible shot under pressure, and she'd won. Later, Soviet soldiers moved in to clear the building. They found a German sniper on the 3rd floor of the bell tower, single shot through the chest, dead. His rifle was still in his hands. A Mauser K-98 with a Zeiss scope, custom modifications. This wasn't a standard-issue weapon. This was a sniper's personal rifle. His scope was still warm. His position was perfect. Concealment, sight lines, escape route. He'd done everything right, except underestimate his target. They found his logbook in his coat pocket. Detailed records, names, dates, distances. 94 confirmed kills, according to his own documentation. His name was listed as Hauptmann Erwin Koenig, Wehrmacht sniper, Special Operations Counter-Sniper Specialist. Or, that's what Soviet propaganda claimed. Western historians debate whether Koenig actually existed. Some say the name was invented for propaganda purposes. Some say he was real, but the details were exaggerated. Some say Lyudmila killed multiple German snipers, and Soviet command combined them into one legendary enemy. The truth doesn't matter. What matters is Lyudmila killed a German sniper who terrorized an entire Soviet sector. She did it by making herself bait. She did it by breaking every rule in Soviet sniper doctrine. She did it because following rules meant death. And Lyudmila had decided a long time ago that she would rather risk death on her own terms than die following someone else's. Between August 1941 and May 1942, Lyudmila Pavlichenko eliminated 309 German soldiers. 36 of them were snipers. 187 were officers and NCOs. The rest were infantry, machine gunners, artillery spotters. Every single kill was confirmed by a witness or recovered enemy documents. Soviet command was strict about confirmation. They had to be. Propaganda required proof. She used the bait technique in at least 60 engagements, probably more. Records from the siege of Sevastopol were incomplete. Many combat reports were lost when the city fell. But survivors remembered. They remembered the woman sniper who stood in the open, who made herself a target, who killed Germans who thought they were the hunters. She was wounded 4 times during her combat service. September 1941, shrapnel from a mortar round, minor cuts to her arm and shoulder, bandaged in the field, back in combat the next day. December 1941, concussion from an artillery blast. A shell landed 10 meters away while she was repositioning, knocked unconscious for 2 minutes, recovered, refused medical evacuation. February 1942, shrapnel to her leg, German 88mm airburst. She was caught in the open during a barrage. Shrapnel tore through her calf. Medics patched her up. She was immobile for a week, Started walking again after 10 days. Back to combat after 3 weeks. June 1942. Mortar shrapnel to the face. This was the injury that ended her combat career. Soviet bombardment of German positions. Counter-battery fire. German mortar rounds walked across her sector. One landed close. She was in a shallow trench, not deep enough. Shrapnel fragments hit her face, cut her cheek, damaged her eye, fractured her jaw. Blood everywhere. Medics thought she'd die from shock. She didn't. Field hospital stabilized her. Military hospital in Sevastopol performed surgery. Doctors saved her eye. Her face would scar, but she'd survive. The injury wasn't immediately life-threatening, but Soviet command made a decision. She was too valuable, too famous, too important for propaganda. Her kill count was already legendary. 309 confirmed, more than any other Soviet sniper at that point in the war, more than most snipers would achieve in the entire war. If she died now, it would be a propaganda disaster. Better to pull her from combat, use her for morale, show her to the world, prove that Soviet women could fight. Soviet command pulled her from the front in July 1942. She was 25 years old. She'd been in combat for 11 months, 309 kills, 4 wounds, 0 losses of nerve, 0 breakdowns, 0 requests to be reassigned. She wanted to stay. She argued with her commanders, said she could still shoot, said her injuries were superficial, said Soviet forces needed experienced snipers. Command said no. Orders were orders. She was going on tour. First to Moscow, then to Britain, then to the United States. A goodwill tour. Show the Allies that Soviets were fighting hard. Show them that even Soviet women were warriors. Build support for a second front. Lyudmila hated it. She was a soldier, not a performer. But she followed orders. She went to Moscow in August 1942, gave speeches, met with Communist Party officials, was awarded the Hero of the Soviet Union Medal, the country's highest honor. She was the first woman in Soviet history to receive it. Newspapers published her story. Pravda ran a front-page article, Lady Death, the woman who killed 309 fascists. Radio broadcasts featured interviews. She described her techniques, talked about using decoys, about dual nest tactics, about hunting German snipers, about making herself bait. Military strategists took notes. Her methods started being taught in Soviet sniper schools. The formal doctrine began to change. Aggressive tactics, psychological warfare, using the enemy's expectations against them. Lyudmila's innovations became official Soviet sniper doctrine by 1943. In September 1942, she travelled to Britain, met with Winston Churchill. He asked her about combat, about killing, about what it felt like to shoot 309 people. She told him it felt like mathematics: distance, wind, target movement, solve the equation, pull the trigger. Churchill said he didn't believe her, said she must feel something, guilt, pride, something. Lyudmila said she felt tired. That was all, just tired. In October 1942, she travelled to the United States. This trip changed everything. She met Eleanor Roosevelt, the First Lady. Roosevelt was fascinated by her, a woman warrior, a feminist icon, living proof that women could do anything men could do. Roosevelt arranged for Lyudmila to speak at rallies, dozens of them, New York, Chicago, San Francisco, Washington. Everywhere she went, thousands of people came to hear her. American newspapers called her the most dangerous woman in the world. Magazines published profiles. Photographers followed her everywhere. She became famous, not in the Soviet Union where she'd been just another soldier, in America where she was exotic, mysterious, a female sniper, an impossibility. American women loved her. She represented something they couldn't be. Women couldn't serve in combat in the US military, but here was Lyudmila. 309 kills, proof that women could fight, proof that gender didn't determine capability. American military officers were skeptical. They questioned her kill count, said it was propaganda, said no one, man or woman, could kill 309 enemy soldiers in 11 months. Lyudmila didn't argue. She let her record speak. Soviet command had confirmed every kill. Witnesses, documents, physical evidence. The numbers were real. The US War Department eventually verified her claims through their own intelligence, cross-referenced her kills with German casualty reports. The numbers matched. She wasn't lying. She really had killed 309 Germans. The tour lasted 6 months. By the time it ended in early 1943, Lyudmila was exhausted. She'd given hundreds of speeches, met thousands of people, smiled for thousands of photographs. She'd become a symbol, and she hated it. She wanted to go back to the front, back to Sevastopol, back to where she mattered. But Sevastopol had fallen in July 1942. The siege had ended. Soviet forces had been evacuated or captured. The city was German now. There was nothing to go back to. Lyudmila returned to the Soviet Union in March 1943. Soviet command assigned her to training duty. She would teach new snipers, pass on her knowledge, her techniques, her innovations. She would create the next generation of Soviet snipers. She taught at multiple training facilities: Leningrad, Moscow, Kiev, hundreds of students. She taught them everything: how to build duel nests, how to use decoys effectively, how to predict enemy sniper positions, how to think like the enemy, how to make yourself the predator, not the prey. Some of her students became legendary themselves. Vasily Zaitsev studied her techniques, adapted them, used them at Stalingrad. His 225 confirmed kills made him the second most successful Soviet sniper of the war after Lyudmila. Other students went on to train more snipers. The knowledge spread. By 1944, Soviet sniper doctrine had been completely transformed. The defensive concealment-focused approach was gone, replaced by aggressive, psychological tactics. Hunting tactics. Soviet snipers weren't hiding anymore. They were hunting. And it worked. German casualty rates from sniper fire increased dramatically between 1943 and 1945. Soviet snipers were killing more German soldiers than ever before. More importantly, they were surviving. Sniper casualty rates dropped. Soviet snipers were living long enough to become experienced, to pass on knowledge, to train others. The doctrinal change saved thousands of Soviet lives, and it all started with Lyudmila deciding to use herself as bait. After the war, Lyudmila struggled with what she'd done: 309 confirmed kills, 309 people who died because she'd been better at solving the mathematics of death. In interviews, she said she'd never enjoyed killing. She'd done it because fascism had to be stopped, because her country was invaded, because her friends were dying. She said every kill haunted her, every face she'd seen through her scope. She said she remembered them all. Lyudmila married twice, had one son, lived quietly in Kiev, the same city where her university had been bombed in 1941. She died on October 10, 1974. She was 58 years old. Stroke. The Soviet Union gave her a hero's funeral. She was buried with full military honors. Her obituary listed her as Lyudmila Pavlichenko, Soviet sniper, hero of the Soviet Union, 309 confirmed kills. Western media barely covered her death. Cold War politics. By the 1970 seconds, her story had been forgotten outside the Soviet Union. Inside the Soviet Union, she was legend. Schools taught about her, books featured her, movies portrayed her. But the real Lyudmila, the one who broke doctrine, who used herself as bait, who reinvented how snipers fought, that version was lost in propaganda. Today, Lyudmila's story exists in fragments. Military histories mention her kill count. Feminist writers cite her as proof women can excel in combat. Russian nationalists claim her as a patriotic icon. But few people understand what she actually did. She didn't just shoot Germans. She revolutionized sniper tactics. She proved that aggression could defeat skill. That psychological warfare was as important as marksmanship. That sometimes the only way to survive was to make yourself the target. Her technique, using decoys and duel nests, is now standard in modern sniper training. The US Marine Corps Scout Sniper School teaches variations of her methods. The British SAS includes her tactics in counter-sniper doctrine. Israeli Defense Forces study her engagements as case studies in urban warfare. None of these organizations mention her by name. None credit her specifically. The tactics have been absorbed into general doctrine, divorced from their creator. But if you visit the Central Museum of the Armed Forces in Moscow, you can see Lyudmila's Mosin Nagant rifle, the same rifle she used for all 309 kills. It's displayed in a glass case with a plaque that reads, "Rifle of Junior Lieutenant Lyudmila Pavlichenko, deadliest female sniper in history." The rifle still has her adjustments, the scope she calibrated, the stock she carved her initials into. Next to it is a photograph. Lyudmila, at 24 years old, standing in front of a ruined building in Odessa, rifle in her hands, eyes staring directly at the camera. She looks tired, determined, unbroken. That photograph is Lyudmila's real legacy. Not the propaganda, not the medals, not the 309 confirmed kills. The legacy is in her eyes. The eyes of a woman who decided she wouldn't be prey, who decided she'd rather risk everything than follow doctrine that didn't work, who decided her life mattered enough to break the rules. That's how survival actually happens in war. Not through following orders, not through doing what you're supposed to do, through soldiers who see that doctrine is killing them and decide to do something different, who risk court-martial because their friends are dying, who use themselves as bait because it's the only way to kill the hunters. Lyudmila used herself as bait to kill 309 Germans. And almost nobody knows her name, but you do now. If this story moved you the way it moved us, hit that like button. Every like helps us rescue more forgotten stories from the archives and share them with people who care. Subscribe to join our community of history keepers. Drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from. Our audience stretches from Moscow to Texas, from military historians to the grandchildren of World War II veterans. You're not just watching, you're part of keeping these memories alive. Thank you for being here.